The Wolf King ignored every precious offering until he saw what the humble girl hid in her pocket. Mist rolled like silk over the mountains, and the forest seemed alive with whispers that only the brave or foolish dared hear. At the heart of this land, crowned by jagged cliffs and shadowed valleys, stood a castle of black stone. Its towers pierced the clouds like dark spears, and its gates were said to have been forged from the bones of the earth itself. This was the domain of the Wolf King, a ruler whose name was spoken in awe and fear, a man whose eyes could chill the blood, and whose silence carried the weight of storms. The Wolf King had ruled Valewood for longer than anyone could remember. Some said he had once been a man with a warm heart, but a curse had twisted his destiny. No offering pleased him. Gold, jewels, enchanted artifacts, all that were brought to his throne were dismissed with a mere flick of his hand. His people learned quickly. Only humility and true intent could ever catch his attention. Many left the castle's courts disappointed, their gifts returned with cold disdain, their pride wounded. On a morning shrouded in silver mist, a procession of villagers made their way to the castle gates. Among them was a girl, small and unassuming, whose clothes were worn but clean, whose hands bore the marks of honest labor rather than wealth. Her hair, dark and tangled in places, framed a face that seemed ordinary, yet there was a quiet determination in her gaze. She carried nothing in her hands, only something hidden deep in her pocket, pressed against her heart like a secret. The Wolf King watched from his high window as the crowd approached. His eyes, sharp as a wolf's, scanned each gift, each attempt to earn his favor. Gold coins gleamed, silver cups sparkled, and rare stones shone with captured light. But as always, he dismissed them all. His heart, if it still beat beneath his cursed armor, remained untouched by the wealth of the world. When the girl stepped forward, the crowd fell silent. There was no fanfare, no loud announcement of her presence. She bowed her head low, speaking her few words with a voice that trembled but only slightly. She spoke not of riches, not of exotic treasures, but of a simple plea for mercy, for protection, and for a chance to serve. The courtiers whispered among themselves. Why would the king even look at her? The Wolf King's gaze, sharp and calculating, lingered longer than expected. There was something different about this girl. She offered nothing of obvious value, yet he felt a subtle pull, an echo of something long forgotten, something gentle in the midst of his dark court. Her hands were empty, yet her presence seemed to carry weight. "Step forward," the king's voice rolled through the hall, deep and commanding, and the girl obeyed, trembling slightly but without fear. She knelt before him, the mist swirling around her as though the very air bowed with respect. "Your gifts are nothing," the king said finally, his tone calm but edged with danger. "Do you not understand what it takes to please me?" The girl did not falter. "I have nothing to give, my king," she said softly, "but what I carry in my pocket is all I own and all I have to offer." A murmur ran through the crowd. What could she possibly hide that would matter to the Wolf King? He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "And what is that?" The girl hesitated, then slowly placed her hand inside the folds of her worn cloak. She pulled out a small charm, no larger than a coin, carved with symbols that seemed almost alive, faintly glowing with a light the eye could barely see. The courtiers gasped. The king's eyes widened slightly, the first sign of emotion in years. This charm was unlike anything brought to the throne before. It did not gleam with gold or sparkle with jewel fire. It hummed with a quiet magic, ancient and patient. The Wolf King reached out, his fingers brushing the surface of the charm. In that instant, a strange warmth, almost forgotten, stirred inside him. "Where did you find this?" His voice was quieter now, curious rather than commanding. "In the forest near my home," she said. "It was hidden under the roots of an old tree, wrapped in cloth. I do not know its power, but it called to me, and I knew it must be kept safe." The king held the charm in his hand, turning it slowly. It seemed to respond to his touch, its glow pulsing like a heartbeat. A memory flickered in the corners of his mind, a memory of a time before the curse, before the loneliness, before he had turned into the Wolf King that all feared. "You are bold," he said finally, more to himself than to her. "Bold and foolish. Many would not dare come to me empty-handed, yet you bring only truth." The girl looked up, her eyes reflecting a mixture of awe and fear. "I only wish to serve my king. If I may, I will keep it safe and guard it with my life." A silence fell in the great hall. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting. The Wolf King, who had never been known to smile, allowed a faint curve of his lips, fleeting and almost imperceptible. "Very well," he said, his voice steady again, though softer than before. "You may stay in the castle. You will serve, but not as others have. You will guard the things that matter, the secrets of this place. Perhaps one day you may even understand their worth." The girl's heart leapt, though she kept her composure. To serve the Wolf King was a task few dared imagine. To guard his secrets was an honor, but also a danger. And yet she felt an unexpected warmth, a fragile hope, stir within her chest. As she was led through the castle halls, she noticed the shadows seemed less threatening than they had when she first arrived. The air, though heavy, carried a strange comfort. The Wolf King walked beside her, silent for long stretches, observing her quietly. His presence was formidable, but there was no malice, only something unreadable, something that hinted at a depth of feeling he had long hidden. Days passed, and the girl began to learn the rhythm of the castle. She explored its corridors and chambers, discovering old libraries filled with tomes that smelled of time and dust, chambers adorned with relics that gleamed with forgotten magic, and hallways where the walls whispered secrets if one listened closely. Yet always the Wolf King was near, watching, testing, his presence a constant reminder of both danger and protection. She soon realized that he was not like other kings. He was merciless, yes, but not cruel. He punished when necessary, and his anger could be swift and terrifying. But he also watched closely, noticing the small acts of courage or honesty and rewarding them in ways subtle and profound. He was a man shaped by loss and burden, a heart locked behind walls of shadow. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting the world in deep violet hues, the Wolf King called her to the highest tower. The wind howled outside, rattling the ancient windows. The girl stood before him, clutching her charm tightly. "You have stayed true," he said, his voice low, almost thoughtful. "Few do. Many lose themselves in fear or greed. But you have kept something that matters. Tell me, do you know what you carry?" I do not," she admitted. "I only know it called to me, and I felt I must protect it." The Wolf King studied her for a long moment. Then he did something he had not done in years. He knelt slightly, not to bow, but to meet her eyes as equals, if only for a moment. "Perhaps then it has chosen well," he murmured. The night grew deeper, shadows stretching long across the tower floor. The girl felt the weight of the castle, the kingdom, and the man before her. She felt both fear and fascination and something softer, a curiosity that bordered on longing. And for the first time in decades, the Wolf King felt the stirrings of something he had thought lost forever, a flicker of hope, a spark of connection. Something that might, if tended carefully, grow into trust, and perhaps even more. Yet as the wind howled outside and the stars blinked faintly above, neither spoke of the future. Both understood in silence that the path ahead would be fraught with shadow, danger, and challenge. And yet both felt a thrill in the unknown. The charm glowed faintly in the girl's hand, a small pulse of magic in the darkness. And somewhere deep within the Wolf King, a thought echoed he had long silenced. Perhaps this humble girl who hid nothing yet carried everything, could change his fate if only he allowed it. The night stretched on and the castle breathed around them, alive with secrets and whispers. Outside, the forest waited, patient and watchful, holding mysteries that even the Wolf King might not yet comprehend. And so, in the heart of Valewood, a bond was quietly forming, a bond that would challenge the Wolf King, test the girl, and set the stage for a tale of shadows, courage, and a magic that neither of them could yet understand. The sun never fully rose over Valewood, yet the days had a rhythm mist rolling through the valleys, the scent of damp earth and pine filling the air. Within the castle, life moved differently. Shadows lingered in every corner, and the walls whispered secrets to those who listened. The Wolf King walked the halls with a quiet authority, and the girl, who had been granted her place in the castle, moved among them with careful steps, her charm hidden close to her heart. From the first day, she noticed something unusual about the castle. It was alive in ways the eye could not always see. Doors would creak open when she approached, hallways seemed longer than they should be, and the air carried a faint hum, a magic older than any living memory. The Wolf King watched her quietly as she explored, his sharp eyes noticing her every action, every hesitation, and every act of courage. One evening, he called her to the eastern wing of the castle, where the halls were lined with murals of battles long past. The colors were faded, yet they pulsed with a quiet life, as if the stories painted there waited to be remembered. The girl stepped into the chamber cautiously, her heart beating with a mixture of curiosity and fear. "You have stayed at the castle for a fortnight now," the Wolf King said, his voice echoing against the stone walls. "You have done well, yet I must know if your courage is more than mere luck." The girl nodded, clutching her cloak close to her chest. "I will do my best, my king," she said softly. The king's eyes flicked to the charm she carried, glowing faintly beneath her fingers. He studied it carefully, the memory of its touch still lingering in his mind. "The charm you carry, it is no ordinary object," he said. "It carries a power older than this kingdom, older than me. And yet you understand it only in part. Do you wish to know its purpose?" The girl hesitated. "Yes, my king, if it pleases you." He stepped closer, his presence filling the room, both intimidating and magnetic. "Long ago," he began, his voice low and almost mournful, "a curse was placed upon me. I was once a king who walked freely among my people, but my heart was twisted by fear and betrayal. The curse binds me, makes me lonely, and keeps me from trusting others. This charm, it is connected to that curse. Perhaps it can help undo it if wielded with courage and wisdom." The girl's eyes widened. "A curse, it must be very powerful to affect even a king," she whispered. "It is," he said, his gaze drifting to the window where the forest stretched endlessly. "It has shaped everything I am. It has shaped how I rule, how I live, and how I see the world. Few have ever come close enough to see what lies beneath it until now." He paused, studying her expression. "And you are not afraid, that is rare, very rare." For a moment the castle was silent except for the distant howl of wolves in the forest. The girl felt a chill, but it was not fear alone. It was awe and something more, an unspoken connection, fragile yet undeniable. "Will you help me?" the king asked finally, his voice quiet, almost pleading. "If this charm can undo what has bound me, I cannot do it alone. I need someone who can see truth in the darkness, someone who will not turn away from what they do not understand." The girl looked at him, the weight of the request heavy upon her. "I will try, my king. I do not fully understand, but I will not turn away." A faint smile, almost imperceptible, crossed his face. For the first time in decades, he felt a spark of hope. The Wolf King was used to commanding armies, to giving orders and being obeyed. Yet here he was asking for trust, asking for a bond that could break or heal him, and he felt exposed in a way he had not allowed himself in years. The days that followed were filled with lessons, exploration, and quiet moments of understanding. The girl learned to navigate the castle's hidden chambers, finding libraries filled with ancient tomes, maps of lands long forgotten, and artifacts that hummed with magic. The Wolf King guided her, teaching her how to sense the subtle currents of power that flowed through the walls and the forest beyond. It was not easy. The castle tested her at every turn. Some hallways shifted, leading her to dead ends or to chambers filled with illusions. Magical creatures, bound by spells older than memory, prowled the corridors at night. Yet she faced them without fear, guided by intuition and courage, and the Wolf King watched silently, pride and admiration hidden behind his usual stoicism. One evening, as they walked along the castle battlements, the moon hung low over the mountains, casting silver light across the forest. The Wolf King broke the silence. "You carry the charm well," he said, "but it is not the object that matters. It is your heart, your intention, that gives it power. Many would touch it and fail. Few have the courage to hold it without greed or fear." The girl turned to him. "I only wish to help," she said softly. "I do not want anything for myself." He looked at her, really looked, and felt something stir inside him, a warmth long buried beneath his curse. "You are rare," he murmured. "Perhaps the rarest I have ever known." Their journey took them beyond the castle walls as well. The Wolf King insisted that she accompany him into the forests, where magic was wild and untamed. They traveled through ancient groves where the trees seemed to breathe, past rivers that whispered secrets of the past, and over cliffs that overlooked valleys shrouded in mist. The girl discovered that the forest was alive, aware of their presence, and that the charm pulsed in resonance with the land itself. During one such journey, they came across a ruined temple, half swallowed by the forest. Stone pillars, cracked and overgrown with vines, rose like forgotten sentinels. Strange markings covered the walls, glowing faintly as if the temple remembered something long lost. "This place is old," the Wolf King said, his voice hushed. "Older than my rule, older than my curse. It is here that the charm may find its purpose, but we must be cautious. The magic here does not forgive mistakes." The girl stepped forward, her hand brushing the charm. It pulsed with a stronger light than before, almost as if it recognized its surroundings. She looked at the king. "I can feel it, it wants something." "Be careful," he warned. "It is testing you, and through you it will test me as well." They explored the temple together, uncovering symbols and carvings that told stories of kings, curses, and redemption. Each discovery drew them closer, and with each shared secret, a fragile bond formed. They spoke little of feelings, yet every glance, every quiet gesture carried weight. One night, as they rested beside a fire in the temple's ruins, the Wolf King finally spoke of his past. "I was not always alone," he said quietly, staring into the flames. "Once I had family, friends, people who trusted me, but betrayal changes a person. The curse came after that, not before. It was a reflection of the fear I carried, the loneliness I allowed to grow." The girl listened, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "You are not alone now," she said softly. "I am here, and I will not leave." He looked at her, the weight of centuries pressing down, yet something inside him stirring, a fragile hope, a spark that might grow. "Perhaps, perhaps you are the first to see me as I truly am," he whispered. The charm glowed brighter in her hand, responding to his words. Magic and emotion intertwined, creating a pulse that seemed to echo across the ruins, across the forest, across the kingdom itself. The girl shivered, not from cold but from the power of what she sensed, a connection deeper than understanding, stronger than fear. But the peace was short-lived. As dawn approached, a shadow moved through the trees outside the temple. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet the Wolf King sensed it immediately. His eyes narrowed, hand resting on the hilt of a sword that had seen countless battles. "Something watches us," he said, his voice tense. "Not all that seeks the charm does so for good. There are those who would take it and through it control me." The girl tightened her grip on the charm. "What will we do?" she asked, fear and determination mingling in her voice. "We prepare," he said, "and we face it together." The forest held its breath, the wind stilled, and the shadows waited. The Wolf King and the girl stood side by side, bound by courage, trust, and the unspoken promise that neither would falter. and somewhere in the distance, a figure watched, drawn by the power of the charm. A force older than both of them stirred, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The Wolf King looked at the girl, the first rays of dawn lighting her face. "Whatever comes," he said quietly, "we face it together." The girl nodded, her heart steady despite the fear. She did not know what lay ahead, but she knew one thing: she would not turn away. The charm pulsed once more, bright and steady, as if acknowledging their resolve. And in that moment, the Wolf King felt a long-forgotten truth. Courage and trust could be more powerful than any curse, more enduring than any shadow. The first step toward redemption had begun, but the path ahead was still dark, full of trials, and watched by forces that neither of them fully understood. The forest of Valewood stretched endlessly before them, thick with mist and shadow. Every tree seemed alive, its roots twisting like serpents, its leaves whispering secrets that only the wind understood. The Wolf King moved silently, his cloak brushing against the damp earth, while the girl followed closely, the charm pressed tightly against her chest. Its glow was faint now, pulsing in time with her heartbeat, as if it sensed the danger lurking near. They had left the ruined temple behind, but the sense of unease lingered. The shadow that had watched them in the trees had not disappeared. It moved unseen, a silent predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The Wolf King's eyes were sharp, scanning every movement, every rustle of leaves, every distant sound. He had faced countless enemies in his life, but something about this presence felt different, older, patient, and cruel. "We must be careful," he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the soft rustle of the forest. "Not all who seek the charm wish to protect the balance of this kingdom. Some wish to use it to control me." The girl nodded, her eyes wide but resolute. "I will not let it fall into the wrong hands," she said, her voice steady. "I do not know its full power, but I will protect it." He studied her, noting the determination in her gaze. "You are brave," he said, "braver than most who have stood before me, yet courage alone will not be enough. We must understand the magic we carry, and the dangers it attracts." They pressed deeper into the forest, following the faint pull of the charm. It seemed to resonate with the land itself, guiding them toward places where the veil between the natural and supernatural was thin. Strange lights flickered between the trees, shadows moved in patterns that defied logic, and the air was heavy with ancient power. After hours of walking, they came to a clearing where the moonlight fell like silver water. In the center stood an ancient stone circle, half buried in moss and vines. The stones were etched with runes that glowed faintly as they approached. The charm pulsed stronger here, its light brightening with each step. "This place," the girl whispered, awe and fear mingling in her voice. "It feels alive." "It is," the Wolf King replied. "This is a place of old magic where the lines between the living world and the unseen are thin. The charm reacts to it because it is part of the same power, the same ancient force that shaped this land and my curse." He stepped into the circle, and the girl followed. As soon as they entered, the runes flared brighter, casting long, dancing shadows across the clearing. The air shimmered and a low hum filled their ears. The charm in her hand glowed intensely, vibrating with a power that was both beautiful and terrifying. "Stand close," the king commanded, his voice firm but calm. "The magic here is old and unpredictable. It will test you. It will show you truths that you may not want to see." The girl nodded, gripping the charm tightly. She felt a warmth spread through her, a connection to the forest, to the castle, and to the Wolf King himself. The runes on the stones began to shift, forming patterns that seemed to tell a story of kings and queens, of curses and redemption, of power used and power lost. As she watched, the images became clearer. She saw a young king, full of hope and pride, betrayed by those he trusted most. She saw the curse forming, a dark shadow wrapping around his heart, twisting his fate. And then she saw herself, a small figure with a glowing charm, standing beside him, offering courage and trust where the king had none. The Wolf King's voice broke her concentration. "Do you see it?" he asked softly. "Do you understand what it is asking of us?" I think so," she replied. "It wants us to face the darkness, to confront the forces that cursed you, but it also wants us to trust each other." He studied her closely, his eyes reflecting both the light of the charm and the shadows of the forest. "Trust," he repeated almost to himself, "something I have not known in centuries, and yet perhaps it is the only way to break the curse." The ground trembled suddenly, and the air grew colder. From the edge of the clearing, a figure emerged tall, cloaked in darkness, eyes glowing faintly red. It moved with a silence that was unnatural, its presence radiating a power that seemed older than the forest itself. "The charm," the figure said, its voice echoing like wind through stone, "it belongs to me." The Wolf King stepped in front of the girl, his sword drawn, the weight of centuries in his stance. "You will not take it," he said, his voice low and deadly. "Not while I stand." The shadow laughed, a sound like breaking branches in a storm. "You cannot protect it alone, Wolf King. You have forgotten the cost of power and the price of trust. This charm will decide who is worthy and who is not." The girl's heart pounded, but she held the charm high. Its glow intensified, forming a protective barrier around them. She felt the magic responding to her courage, to her willingness to face fear without turning away. The Wolf King noticed it too, and for the first time in years he felt a flicker of hope that perhaps they could survive this trial together. The shadow advanced, and the forest seemed to close in. Trees bent as if alive, roots twisting to block their path. The Wolf King moved with precise, lethal grace, deflecting attacks that seemed more like magical energy than physical force. The girl followed his lead, the charm acting as both shield and guide, revealing weak points in the shadow's attacks. Hours passed, though time felt suspended in the forest's strange light. They fought together, each move in perfect sync, each decision driven by trust and understanding. Slowly, the shadow began to falter, its power weakening in the presence of the combined courage and magic. Finally, with a surge of light from the charm, the shadow screamed, dissolving into mist that was carried away by the wind. The forest fell silent once more, and the clearing glowed faintly under the moonlight. The Wolf King sheathed his sword, breathing heavily. You are stronger than I imagined," he said, his voice softer than usual, carrying a hint of admiration and something more, something he had not allowed himself to feel in centuries. The girl smiled faintly, exhausted but relieved. "We are stronger together," she said. He studied her, and for a moment the weight of his curse seemed lighter, as if her presence and courage had lifted some of the darkness that had bound him. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "perhaps it is not the charm alone that can break the curse. Perhaps it is trust, courage, and connection, something I have long forgotten." They spent the night in the clearing, the forest around them calm, almost protective. The charm continued to glow softly, a reminder of the power they carried and the bond they were forming. The Wolf King spoke little, but the girl sensed a change in him, a subtle shift from isolation to cautious hope, from fear to trust. As dawn approached, the Wolf King and the girl began their journey back to the castle, yet the forest held its secrets still. From the shadows, eyes watched, unseen and patient. The forces that had cursed the king were not finished. The shadow they had defeated was only a messenger, a warning of challenges yet to come. The Wolf King walked silently, his thoughts heavy. He had seen the girl's courage, her honesty, and her determination. She had faced fear without faltering, and in doing so had awakened something long buried within him. He realized that his heart, bound by centuries of curse and mistrust, was opening, slowly and cautiously, to trust again. The girl walked beside him, feeling the weight of the charm and the responsibility it carried. She knew their journey was far from over. Danger lurked in every shadow, and the magic of the charm would attract enemies who sought power, control, or vengeance. Yet she also knew that with the Wolf King by her side, and with trust guiding them, they could face whatever came. As they neared the castle, the first rays of sun touched the highest towers, casting a pale light over the stone walls. The kingdom seemed unchanged from the outside, yet within, a quiet transformation was taking place. The Wolf King, once a figure of fear and isolation, had begun to feel the stirrings of hope, and the girl, once a humble visitor with nothing to offer, carried the power to change not only the king's fate but the destiny of the entire kingdom. Yet even as they returned, the shadow lingered, hidden among the trees. It watched, patient and calculating, waiting for the moment when the charm would be vulnerable, and when the Wolf King's heart would be tested again. The Wolf King entered the castle first, followed by the girl, who kept the charm close. They had survived the first trial, but both knew that greater challenges awaited, trials that would test their courage, their trust, and the bond that was beginning to grow between them. The forest whispered behind them, secrets hidden in the mist, and somewhere beyond the edge of their vision, a force older than the Wolf King's curse stirred, drawn by the magic of the charm and the courage of the girl. Their journey was far from over. The shadows of the past would rise again, the secrets of the curse would demand confrontation, and the kingdom of Valewood would tremble under the weight of powers that few could understand. But for now, in the quiet of the early morning, the Wolf King and the girl walked together, bound by trust, courage, and the first fragile threads of connection that might one day heal the darkness that had long ruled their world. The castle of Valewood loomed under a sky tinged with crimson, as if the heavens themselves had been drawn into the kingdom's shadow. The Wolf King stood atop the highest tower, the charm clutched tightly in the girl's hands. Its light pulsed like a heartbeat, stronger than ever, casting long, wavering shadows across the stone walls. The shadow they had first faced in the forest now moved openly, its form taller, sharper, more defined. It exuded a power that was both terrifying and mesmerizing, a force older than any living memory. Its eyes glowed like red embers, fixed on the charm and on the Wolf King. "You have survived the first trials," the shadow said, its voice echoing through the castle halls. "But now the final test begins. Will you protect what you hold dear, or will you let it consume you both?" The Wolf King's jaw tightened. "I will protect it," he said, voice steady though his heart raced. "No darkness, no force can take what is ours to guard." The girl stood close beside him, her fingers intertwined with the charm. "We face it together," she said, and her words, simple but sincere, strengthened something deep inside him. The shadow advanced, and the castle seemed to bend and twist under its presence. Windows shattered silently, winds roared, and the stones beneath their feet trembled. Yet the Wolf King did not falter. He stepped forward, drawing the sword that had never failed him. Its blade reflected the glow of the charm, the light mingling with the darkness, a symbol of the battle to come. "You carry courage in your heart," the shadow said, turning its gaze to the girl. "But courage alone cannot command magic. Only sacrifice can shape destiny." The girl tightened her grip on the charm, feeling the pulse of magic flowing through her. She could feel the shadow's strength pressing against her, threatening to overwhelm her mind and body. But she did not let go. She thought of the Wolf King, of his long years of loneliness, of the trust they had built. She focused on that connection, letting it anchor her in the storm. The Wolf King stepped closer to her, placing a hand over hers on the charm. "You are not alone," he said softly, and in that moment the bond between them strengthened the magic of the object. The light pulsed brighter, forming a protective barrier that shimmered around them like liquid silver. The shadow roared, a sound that shook the heavens, and lunged toward them. Its attacks were relentless, striking with a force that could tear stone and steel. Yet the Wolf King met each attack with precision. his sword moving in a deadly dance that combined skill, strength, and years of experience. The girl's courage and the charm's magic shielded them both, creating a balance between strength and protection, action and trust. Hours seemed to pass in the battle, though time felt suspended under the crimson sky. Every strike, every movement, every pulse of light carried the weight of destiny. And in those moments, the Wolf King realized something he had not admitted even to himself, that he had come to rely on the girl, not just for the charm, but for courage, hope, and connection he had long denied himself. The shadow paused, sensing its hold weakening. The Wolf King pressed forward, his sword cutting through the darkness, guided by the girl's steady hands and the pulsing light of the charm. "You cannot win," the shadow hissed, retreating slightly. "The curse is eternal. You will fall into darkness and the charm will be mine." "No," the Wolf King said, his voice echoing with a power beyond the physical. "The curse ends tonight." The girl's hands glowed brighter as she lifted the charm high. The magic within it expanded, surrounding them both, filling the tower, the castle, the forest, and even the sky with light. The shadow screamed, unable to withstand the combined strength of courage, trust, and connection. Its form dissolved into mist, scattered by the wind, leaving behind only silence. For the first time in decades, the Wolf King felt peace. The weight of his curse, heavy and relentless, lifted slightly. He looked at the girl, and the connection between them, forged in fear, trust, and shared trials, was undeniable. He realized that the curse had not been broken by magic alone, but by the courage to trust, to connect, and to fight for what was truly valuable. The girl lowered the charm, her face glowing with relief and awe. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice trembling though not with fear. "Yes," the Wolf King said softly. "It is over, but only because we faced it together, only because we trusted each other." The castle seemed to breathe, stones settling, winds calming, shadows retreating. The forests beyond were quiet, and the first full rays of sunlight in decades broke through the mist, casting Valewood in a golden glow. The kingdom, long shrouded in shadow, seemed to awaken with light and hope. The Wolf King turned to the girl. For the first time, his expression softened completely, free from the weight of fear or anger. "You have changed everything," he said. "Not the kingdom, not the curse, but me. You reminded me what it is to hope, to trust, to feel beyond the shadow." The girl smiled, shy yet proud. "I only did what I could. You opened the path for me, for both of us." He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. Their connection, forged through danger and trust, felt like the promise of something enduring. "Together," he said, "we will face whatever comes next, together." The charm, now dimmer but still warm in her hands, seemed content, its magic spent in a way that was gentle and protective rather than overwhelming. It had completed its purpose, not by destroying the curse outright, but by guiding them to the courage and connection needed to overcome it. In the days that followed, life in Valewood began to change. The villagers noticed that the forest seemed calmer, the mist lighter, and the air carried a warmth that had not existed in decades. The Wolf King ruled with a new strength, not the fearsome power of old, but the quiet, steady authority of a ruler who understood trust and connection. The girl, once humble and overlooked, became a trusted companion, advisor, and confidant, her courage recognized by all who witnessed it. Yet the memory of shadows remained. The Wolf King and the girl knew that magic of such power could never be fully contained, that forces older than the kingdom itself still watched, waiting. But they also knew that together, they could face whatever challenges arose, guided by trust, courage, and the bond they had forged in the face of danger. One evening, standing on the tower where their journey had begun, the Wolf King looked out over the kingdom, the charm safely hidden but still close. The girl stood beside him, her hand brushing his lightly, a quiet reminder of the connection that had changed both their lives. "You have grown stronger," he said quietly, "stronger than I could have imagined, And I have learned what it means to trust again." The girl smiled, her eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun. "And I have learned what it means to stand by someone, not just out of duty, but because I believe in them, and in us." He looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time in centuries he felt hope not as a fragile flicker but as a steady flame. "Then perhaps Valewood can truly heal," he murmured. "Not just the land, but the hearts that have been broken." The charm glowed faintly one last time, a pulse of light like a heartbeat, acknowledging the bond between them and the courage that had carried them through darkness. The Wolf King and the girl stood together, shadows of the past retreating, the kingdom bathed in the promise of light, and the knowledge that no curse, no matter how ancient, could withstand trust, courage, and connection. And though the forests still held their secrets, and the winds whispered of ancient magic, the Wolf King and the girl knew one truth above all. They were no longer bound by fear, nor by solitude. Together they had faced darkness, tamed it with courage, and transformed it into hope. Valewood, once a kingdom of shadows, now stood as a land of light, guided by a king who had learned to trust and a girl whose humble courage had changed everything. Their journey was not over, for life would always bring new challenges, but they would face them together, hearts bound by the trials they had endured and the magic they had awakened. The Wolf King looked at the girl, and in her eyes he saw the reflection of everything he had lost, everything he had feared, and everything he could finally embrace. And in that reflection he found redemption, hope, and the quiet, enduring promise of a future shared. The charm, now resting safely in her pocket once more, pulsed faintly, a reminder that magic, courage, and trust would always guide those who dared to hold on to them. And together they walked forward, not as king and servant, but as equals bound by trust, courage, and a love that had grown from shadows into light. The sun dipped fully below the horizon, casting Valewood in a soft twilight, and for the first time in centuries, the kingdom breathed freely, its heart unshackled and its future open to endless possibility.